A racist cop kicks a quiet, elderly black man's chair in a packed courtroom, assuming he's a nobody. He's about to learn that man is a decorated general, and his newly appointed chief of police. The air in courtroom 3B was stale, thick with the scent of cheap disinfectant and quiet desperation. It was a landscape of weary faces and worn-out wooden benches, a place where time seemed to slow down, measured in the drone of the clerk and the rustle of legal papers. In the back row, away from the nervous energy of the defendants and their families, sat a man who seemed entirely out of place precisely because he was so calm. He was in his early 60s, a black man whose distinguished face was a roadmap of experience. He wore a simple, charcoal gray suit, clean but far from luxurious, and held a thin, worn leather briefcase on his lap. He wasn't fidgeting or checking a phone. He was simply watching, his gaze missing nothing, his posture straight, radiating a quiet dignity that was as solid and unassuming as a mountain. This was retired General Marcus Thorne, though no one in this room knew or would have guessed it. He was here to observe the justice system his new department would feed into, to see the machine from the ground up before he took command. That's when Officer Bradley Walker strode in. Walker wore his uniform like a suit of armor and his authority like a weapon. He had a reputation that preceded him, a long shadow of civilian complaints, a quick temper, and a prejudice he barely bothered to conceal. He scanned the room not with the discerning eye of a peacekeeper, but with the predatory gaze of a bully looking for a target. His eyes landed on General Thorne. In Walker's simplistic worldview, an older black man in a cheap suit sitting alone in a courtroom could only be one thing: trouble, or related to it. He saw weakness, not wisdom, a problem, not a pillar of a community. Walker swaggered down the aisle, his boots echoing with an arrogance that made people flinch. He stopped directly in front of Thorne. "This row is for officials. You need to move," he commanded, his voice a low growl. Thorne looked up, his expression unreadable. "I am here on official business, officer," he replied, his voice calm and even, carrying a natural resonance of command that Walker was too blinded by his own bigotry to recognize. The quiet refusal was more than Walker's ego could handle. He saw it as a challenge from someone he considered inferior. "Official business? Don't make me laugh," Walker sneered, leaning in closer. "Now move it, old man, before I make you." When Thorne didn't immediately stand, Walker's face contorted in a flash of rage. In a shocking act of aggression, he drew back his foot and kicked the leg of the wooden chair Thorne was sitting on. The sharp crack echoed in the tense silence. The impact jolted Thorne, and his worn briefcase tumbled from his lap, spilling its contents across the grimy floor. A few items skittered under the bench: a framed photograph of a much younger Thorne standing with his arm around a smiling young soldier, a small, neatly folded American flag, and a single, polished brass shell casing. A collective gasp went through the nearby rows. But Thorne did not react with anger. As Walker muttered a vile racial slur under his breath, confident in his untouchability, Thorne simply looked at the scattered pieces of his life on the floor. Then, with a slow, deliberate grace that was almost painful to watch, he knelt down. His movements were precise, economical, like a soldier clearing a minefield. He picked up the photograph first, carefully wiping a smudge of dust from the glass. His inner monologue wasn't one of rage, but of cold, clear assessment. Target identified. Behavior pattern confirmed. The sickness is exactly as reported. He gathered his things, his face a mask of impenetrable calm, and slid them back into his briefcase. He glanced up just long enough to memorize the name and badge number on Walker's uniform: Beef Walker, number 734. Then, he stood up, gave a nearly imperceptible nod, and walked out of the courtroom, leaving a stunned silence and a smirking, self-satisfied cop in his wake. As General Thorne stepped out into the chaotic hallway of the courthouse, the quiet dignity that surrounded him seemed to create a pocket of calm in the storm. To the world, he was just an anonymous man who had been publicly humiliated. But the truth was a universe away from that perception. General Marcus Thorne was a name spoken with reverence in the halls of the Pentagon. He was a 4-star general, a decorated veteran of 3 wars, a master strategist who had rebuilt entire divisions from the ashes of battle. He was a leader who had commanded thousands of soldiers, a man for whom integrity and honor were not just words, but the very principles by which he had lived his life for over 40 years. And now, he was about to face a different kind of war. The city was on a knife's edge. The police department was rotting from the inside out, plagued by a culture of corruption, brutality, and a deep-seated racism exemplified by officers like Walker. Public trust had completely eroded, and the relationship between the community and the police was a festering wound. The mayor, facing a crisis that threatened to tear the city apart, had made a bold, desperate move. He had gone outside the system, looking for a leader who was immune to the department's toxic culture. "I don't need another cop who came up through a broken system," the mayor had said in a private meeting with Thorne. "I need a leader. I need a man forged in honor, with a will of iron, to tear this department down to the studs and build it back up." Thorne had been hesitant to accept. His retirement was supposed to be quiet. But the mayor's plea spoke to his deepest sense of duty. He agreed, but on one condition. "Before I take command," Thorne had stated, "I need to see the battlefield for myself. I need to walk among the people and see the enemy up close. The announcement can wait. My first day on the job is today." That was why he was in the courtroom, not as a general, not as the incoming chief, but as a citizen, gathering his own intelligence. The incident with Walker wasn't just an insult, it was invaluable data. Meanwhile, back at the 12th precinct, Officer Bradley Walker was reliving his moment of triumph. Leaning against a row of lockers, he recounted the story to a pair of younger officers who hung on his every word. He embellished the tale, painting himself as a hero who had single-handedly restored order. "You should have seen this old guy," Walker bragged, a smug grin on his face. "Sitting there like he owned the place. Tried to give me that hard stare, you know. I taught him about respecting the uniform." He let out a harsh laugh. "Had him picking his junk up off the floor like the trash he is." He used the slur again, this time louder, prouder, soaking in the sycophantic laughter of his audience. He was a king in his own small, rotten kingdom, completely oblivious that the man he had just tried to break was about to become the force that would shatter his world. The pieces were moving on a chessboard he didn't even know he was playing on, and checkmate was just hours away. The briefing room at the 12th precinct was packed shoulder to shoulder, buzzing with a nervous energy that was a mix of cynicism and cautious curiosity. The announcement of a new, surprise chief of police had sent shockwaves through the department. Rumors flew like wildfire. Officers gathered in tight knots, speculating, complaining, and posturing. In the middle of it all, Officer Bradley Walker stood with his chest puffed out, basking in the attention from his earlier story. He felt untouchable, a veteran of the streets who believed he was too entrenched to be affected by any change in management. He was the embodiment of the old guard, arrogant and resistant. The chatter died down abruptly as the mayor stepped to the podium at the front of the room. His face was grim, his jaw set. The air grew heavy with anticipation. "Good afternoon," the mayor began, his voice devoid of pleasantries. "I'm not going to waste your time. We all know this department is in crisis. We have lost the trust of the very people we are sworn to protect. The old ways of doing things are over. The culture of silence that protects bad officers ends today." He paused, letting his words sink in, his eyes sweeping over the sea of blue uniforms. "I have made the decision to bring in a leader from outside our own ranks. Someone with an unimpeachable record of leadership, a man who understands that a badge is not a crown, but a burden of trust. He is a man who has been tested by fire and defined by honor." A nervous murmur rippled through the room. Walker rolled his eyes, whispering to a colleague, "Here we go. Some desk jockey from another city." The mayor leaned into the microphone, his voice ringing with finality. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my profound honor to introduce you to your new chief of police, General Marcus Thorne." The name hung in the air for a second, causing a ripple of confusion. "General?" Then, the doors at the back of the room opened. In walked the man from the courtroom. But it was a terrifying, awe-inspiring transformation. Gone was the simple, unassuming suit. In its place was the crisp, perfectly tailored, dark blue uniform of the chief of police, adorned with the gleaming insignia of his new rank. But it was the man inside the uniform that commanded the room. His shoulders were squared, his back ramrod straight with the unmistakable bearing of a military commander. His face, which had seemed merely weary in the dim light of the court, was now set with an expression of absolute, unshakable authority. His eyes, calm and observant before, now swept the room with a piercing intensity that seemed to look right through every officer, weighing and measuring them. A collective, audible gasp filled the briefing room. Jaws literally dropped. The good cops, the ones who were tired of the corruption, felt a sudden, electrifying surge of hope. The corrupt ones felt a cold dread snake its way up their spines. And Officer Bradley Walker, his world simply stopped. The smug grin on his face froze, then shattered like glass. The color drained from his cheeks, leaving behind a pasty, sickly white. His mouth fell open, a silent "oh" of pure horror forming on his lips. He recognized the suit. He recognized the face. He recognized the man he had kicked, humiliated, and called a slur just a few hours ago. In that moment, he wasn't a tough cop anymore. He was just a small, hateful man staring at the face of his own reckoning. And right here, if you believe karma has a way of delivering justice at the perfect moment, hit that like button. Because what happens next is why we're all here. Chief Marcus Thorne walked to the podium with a steady, unhurried gait. He didn't need to pound the lectern or raise his voice to command attention, his mere presence silenced the room more effectively than a gavel ever could. The air crackled with tension. He stood for a moment, his penetrating gaze making a full sweep of the room, letting every single officer feel the weight of his scrutiny. When he spoke, his voice was calm, measured, yet it filled the room with the force of a command. In the United States Army, he began, we have a code. It's built on 7 core values: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. These are not suggestions. They are the standards by which a soldier lives, and if necessary, dies. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. A police department is no different. The uniform you wear is a symbol of public trust. The badge you carry is a promise to protect and serve every member of your community. All of them. Without exception. His eyes, which had been sweeping the room, now settled on one man. Officer Bradley Walker. The name dropped like a stone into a silent pool. Every head turned. Front and center, Thorne commanded. The words were not shouted, but they were absolute. Walker looked as if he had been physically struck. He stumbled forward, his usual swagger completely gone, replaced by a clumsy, shuffling gait. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He came to a halt before the podium, unable to meet the chief's unwavering gaze, his eyes fixed on the floor. Thorne looked down at him, not with rage, but with a profound, almost surgical disappointment. He held up a thin manila folder. My first official duty as chief is to assess the assets and liabilities of this department, he said, his voice cold and precise. Your record, Officer Walker, is a significant liability. It is filled with a pattern of unnecessary aggression and civilian complaints that have been systematically ignored. He placed the folder down. But records can be misleading. That is why I believe in personal observation. This morning, in courtroom 3B, I personally witnessed your conduct. I saw you abuse your authority. I saw you humiliate a citizen without cause. And I heard the prejudice in your voice. He let a heavy silence fall. That behavior is a cancer. And it stops today. Effective immediately, you are suspended, pending termination. Hand over your badge and your service weapon. Walker's head snapped up, his face a mask of disbelief and desperation. Sir, I can explain. No, officer, Thorne cut him off, his voice like steel. You can't. You have already explained everything I need to know about your character. There is no place for hate under true leadership. If you stand with leaders like Chief Thorne who have the courage to clean house, drop a 100 in the comments to show your respect. Officer Walker, stripped of his authority and his arrogance, was escorted from the room, leaving behind a stunned and profoundly changed department. His dismissal was not just the end of one corrupt cop's career, it was a powerful message that echoed through every precinct in the city. The old guard was finished. A new era had dawned. Chief Thorne was true to his word. In the months that followed, he systematically dismantled the corrupt structures that had allowed men like Walker to thrive. He implemented rigorous new training programs, focusing on de-escalation, ethics, and community partnership, drawing directly on the military's codes of conduct and accountability. He established a zero-tolerance policy for abuse of power and created a transparent internal affairs division that the public could finally trust. The transformation was not easy, but it was decisive. Under the general's leadership, the department slowly began to heal. The culture shifted from one of confrontation to one of service. Public trust, once shattered, began to mend, piece by piece. Chief Thorne proved that a uniform, whether military or police, is only as honorable as the person who wears it. He didn't just clean up a department, he restored its soul. This is a story about a uniform, and the honor required to wear it. So what do you think is the most important quality in a leader? Let us know your thoughts below, and always, comment respect. If stories of justice and honor fire you up, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next.